Greg Gutfeld with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters said she once took a Keebler elf to the prom. Dana Perino, the 5.
Just one.
The House on the Hill just passed the bill, which seems like a big deal. Still, the media has decided it's been a bad year for Trump. See, as the year ends, the hacks must splice together their annual scorecards. And yes, they confirm Trump did badly. Well, except for ISIS. Getting rid of ISIS, that's a good thing. We destroyed modern-day Nazis. But other than that, it was a bad year for Trump. Except for the judges, Gorsuch, and all those other strong appointments. But anyway, terrible year for Trump. Except for the economy and stock market's on fire. Consumer confidence is soaring. But beyond that, it has been awful. Except for the new energy policy, the approved pipeline, the new drilling, the spread of fracking, gas prices flat as a pancake. But I'm telling you, it's still a bad year. I'd hate to be Trump. He's got no singular achievements. Well, okay, there is that tax bill, which granted has been improved since its first draft. But it's just been a lousy year. Except for the improved relations with China and Russia, India, the Saudis, Israel. But it's really been a downer for Donny Boy. Did I leave anything out? Aside from deregulation, ditching the accords, repealing the mandate. Oh, and also driving Eminem nuts. That's kind of awesome. So what's the lesson from Trump's bad year? That when compiling your year-end condemnations of Donald Trump, it's a lot harder than it looks. What started out as evil was downgraded to incompetent, and now looks pretty damn effective. No wonder the media looks so sad, which has now been downgraded to miserable. All right, interesting little fact I learned today, Dana, right after they are actually doing a revote of the bill tomorrow. Why would they revote?
It's just a technical glitch, really, because there are 3 provisions in the GOP tax bill that the Senate can't have voted on. Anyway, basically, they just have to realign the bills, and it's a technical thing. There's no problem. The tax bill.
They got to get the bills in line. Yeah.
Yes. That's all.
All right. Big deal?
I think it is a big deal. This is something that the president's been working really hard on. He's been around the clock and talking to constituents and trying to get support for this. They really were anxious to make sure to get some kind of good legislative accomplishment prior to the close of the year, especially with Christmas and whatnot. So this, to me, I think can only be viewed as a positive. It's definitely steps in the right direction, and he seems to have been able to coalesce some good broad-based support, even from people who haven't traditionally supported him or his legislation in the past. So in that sense, yes. And it's also important because it's one of the main campaign, promises that he made when he went across this country to try to engender support for his movement, for the working men and women that he said were left behind, to say, listen to me, I will give you relief. You will feel it, you will see it, and it will be something that's tangible for your families.
Jesse, I'm going to play you some sound from Nancy Pelosi, and I'd like you to respond to it. Yes.
Do you have to?
Because it's the one thing you hate more than speed metal.
It's a close call.
Let's roll what she felt about the bill.
This is the worst bill to ever come to the floor of the House, with stiff competition for what some of the things they've tried to do. The worst bill in history.
Jesse?
They're all the worst bills, anything the Republicans.
Except for Bill Clinton.
Right, that's true. They love him. I'm going to change my grade a few weeks ago on the anniversary of the election. I gave him a B+ on domestic policy. Now with the tax bill, I'm going to A-. Imagine what he'd be doing if the media wasn't 90% negative. It's a big headwind.
And you don't grade on the curve. Right?
I do not. I do not. Only with myself.
Yeah.
So economic optimism right now is through the roof. 5,000-point gain in the Dow for the first year. That's historic. And I think because finally America's getting over the Great Recession hangover. So Trump is like the Gatorade and the bacon, egg, and cheese that we need after a hangover, and it's working. And I want to try your little concept. Now, you always say, what specifically has Trump done to change your actual life? Well, here's an example. I think a third of Americans have 401ks, and the average 401k has about $100,000 in it. Just in the first year alone, the Trump economy would have made you an extra $25,000 for your 401k.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. Not only that, jobs are up, wages are up slightly, gas prices, as you say, are flat, and home ownership is up too. So just safety and security. We're not bringing in all these risky refugees. The ISIS caliphate's destroyed. The border crossings are down, and MS-13 prosecutions are up 89%. And then the social issues, what the liberals love to talk about. Gay marriage is still legal. Abortion is still legal. Medical marijuana, recreational marijuana. The states that had that still have that. So the Trump derangement syndrome, I believe, is self-inflicted. All the fear and loathing that the media pumps up is a scam in order to keep his poll numbers down and to help the Democrats win the midterms. So if you just look around and feel around, Trump has been good for America and Americans, not bad.
Well, Juan, the vast majority are going to get a tax break. That must destroy you inside.
Oh, yeah, it kills me. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. This is so ridiculous. I have no idea even how to listen to you guys anymore. Some days it's just
I know the feeling with you.
man, it's just unbelievable the way you put lipstick on a pig. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's a great line. Haven't heard that one before.
Because, let's just not view what Juan Williams has to say. Let's think about what the American people have to say.
Okay, go to the polls.
The polls say,
Oh, here we go.
Didn't we just talk about
32% approval for
That's
Donald
right.
Trump at the end of his
They
first
don't
year.
have to like
you
him.
know what? You don't want to hear that.
No,
How about the
I
tax
can hear
bill?
it.
How about the tax bill, Greg? 55% of Americans oppose it. 66% say it's helping only the wealthy.
Because the media has distorted it.
Oh, yeah.
The vast
let me
majority
tell
are
you-
getting tax
let me
breaks.
tell
How can you
what-
argue
oh, yeah,
that?
Because you know what? You are counting crumbs while the cake is going to the 1%.
$2,500
And then
is
you
crumbs?
say, oh, gee, what's wrong with you,
I guess
little
when you're
people?
rich,
Enjoy your
$2,500
crumbs,
is a
little
crumb.
people. Little people, just eat up and celebrate our dear leader, Donald Trump.
$2,500 is a
Oh,
crumb.
get out of
At
there.
least they got crumbs.
Let me tell. Oh, yeah, that's a.
They just took the whole
is
cake
that
with
your
Obama.
argument? Your argument is
Obama
at least
just took
they
the
got
whole cake.
crumbs. I can't believe this. At least they
Hey,
got
listen,
crumbs.
a crumb is
Everybody at
something for a
home-
middle-class
Everybody
person,
at
but
home,
for
did you
someone
hear
else,
what
it's
this
a whole
guy
wedge
just
of
said?
cake.
At least you little people got crumbs.
They've been robbing us blind in
get out
federal
of town.
government for the
Oh,
last
there you
8
go.
years. Finally, the
You know what?
voters brought in Republicans
You're-
to give them some of their
Yeah.
hard-earned money back,
Yeah.
and
Let me
you
just
don't want
say-
them to have it.
Your condescending attitude towards the American people.
But you're
I-
just
I-
Condescending
That's
one.
why you're a
The
Trump
middle
guy.
class got savage
yeah.
during the Obama
Yeah.
years.
And
Finally, things are starting to
and
look good
finally-
again, and you're not
finally,
liking it.
Let me pick on Kimberly Guilfoyle. Because, Kimberly, you said that Donald
That's
Trump
a
went
fight you're
across
gonna
the
lose.
country.
Yes.
And you said Donald Trump said to the American people, I'm never going to forget you. I'm standing up for the forgotten man and woman in this country, the
That's-
working
yes.
class people.
That's what I said.
Oh, and guess what?
What? Guess what?
If this was a populist bill, it is a huge failure even by that standard
The vast
because it
middle
doesn't
class are
help
getting
the
cuts.
working class
Okay,
American.
bottom line, you can say that all you want.
Oh,
you
I-
can shape shift
I'm just
polls.
making stuff up.
Okay.
You are.
Sometimes, yes. But the fact of the matter is it does provide economic relief and tax cuts for the majority of middle-class families. So here's the thing. They're actually going to get this, maybe even early part of next year, be able to feel some of this benefit, and that's going to be tangible. And then you're going to see the numbers go up in the poll.
Yeah,
If he was worried about polling and if he thought it was so determinative, then he would have thought that he was never going to win the presidency. He's doing this because it's the right thing to do and because he promised it and he has integrity and he cares about making an economic
Let me
improvement.
just say, he's
and
doing
by
this.
the way, record numbers. Look at the Dow already.
but
5,000
Kimberly,
points. Hey, up.
Obama
Record
did
numbers.
better in his first year in terms of the stock market's performance. Obama did better last year in terms of job creation than Trump has done this year. And here's something from Nancy Pelosi, Jesse's favorite.
A lot of credit.
83% of the benefits of this tax bill go to the top 1%. In fact, 60%
Juan,
go to the 0.1%.
what you call a crumb might look like a crumb from your lofty perch,
Oh, yes,
multimillionaire Juan
that's it,
Williams,
that's
but
it.
to real hardworking Americans,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more money in their pocketbook.
can't fool
and it's
people.
their money.
Oh,
Yes,
it's their
it's
money.
their
Not
money.
yours,
That's
Juan.
why it's going to the
Not
corporation.
yours.
Oh, no.
By the way, if it's
They
only a
made it.
crumb, why are you so worried about them getting it back? That's what I don't get. The government
Oh.
still needs it.
You
Hey, I
just
want to move
wanna
on
fool people.
because
You don't care that the rich get everything.
yeah, we're
They
evil.
pay all the
We're
taxes.
Rich people are evil. I get it.
Juan,
They
here's Matt.
pay all the
If
taxes.
the rich people
They're evil.
pay a lot of the taxes and then there's a tax cut, they get to then proportionally keep more money.
Oh, yes.
Is
You know
that
what-
hard to understand?
You know what the French call this?
Is that hard to
Noblesse
understand?
oblige. You know what that is?
Juan,
That's
we don't speak
condescend-
French in
oh,
this
that's
country.
Right.
You never quote French.
Hey, I
to
want
me.
to get Dan in here, but first I want to get back to the
She
difficulty.
can hear anymore.
Yeah,
I
yes.
need a miracle ear after
That is true. Yeah. The difficulty the media has in framing their year-end stories because of the emotion versus the reality. This is Sarah Sanders going over the achievements today.
Nearly 1.7 million new jobs have been created, and the unemployment rate has fallen to 4.1%, the lowest rate in 17 years. The stock market reached a record high more than 60 times. We finally set up our nation on a path to not only energy independence, but energy dominance. We've seen the lowest level of illegal border crossings on record. Justice Gorsuch was confirmed to the Supreme Court, and this evening, hopefully upon passage, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the President will have delivered the most significant tax cut in the history of the nation and repealed the Obamacare individual mandate.
So, Dana, a person may not like any of those things, but those things happened. So I think you're seeing in headlines, this is my theory, that people are shifting away from awful to, well, all right, better than expected. The guy actually got some stuff done, which is really hard for people to do.
I think that she makes a compelling closing argument there.
Yeah.
She could do it with a little more joy.
Yes.
I mean, they have a good story to tell.
Yeah.
But there is something strange about the public's mood writ large and what's actually happening on the ground. I actually think that if you were to take this back to the fight between establishment Republicans and the new Trump Republicans, that actually all of those things that you listed, if you're a traditional Republican, you're looking at that and you're like, oh, pretty good.
That's
pretty good. So I think that the personnel changes that happened sort of in the 9th month, or 8th and 9th month of August and September, have changed things in terms of, I guess, tone and demeanor.
This is an interesting point.
Which I think could help. But there's this lag part. And the other thing is there's something, the firing of James Comey, which leads to the special counsel, which leads to every day talking about Russia thing. That is something that I think is a drag on their ability to tell the other story with joy.
Yeah, but what you're talking about, there's an interesting lag between what I hate the phrases establishment Republicans and the pro-Trump Republicans.
But we know, but that's how we define it.
Yeah, but you have people. There's a feud going on in National Review right now between Charles Cook and the Jennifer Rubins and David Frums of the world over this, because the hate, Kimberly, for Trump is so strong that they can't actually modify just a little bit and see that they're for a lot of these things that he got done.
Right, because they have just essentially, an inherent bias in terms of they dislike the individual regardless of what they have to proffer, right? And that's the problem. So you have to be able to separate that, the sender from what you're actually receiving.
Yes.
And look at the tangible benefits of it. But I've actually seen, besides a few kind of like outliers, more of, a coalition supporting the tax benefits and what the president is trying to do. So I find that a little bit more encouraging.
Can I mention just one thing? Can I add just one thing on that, since I was so calm earlier? Just one point. Earlier in the year, you had the fights between Ryan and Trump. That was like every day, like fight Ryan and Trump. So today, what happened on the House tax bill? You had President Trump's #1 agenda from his campaign and for the first year of his presidency meet up with Paul Ryan's lifelong career goal. And they actually get it done in that first year. And that is something that they can go home and talk about. But the Democrats are going to go home and talk about it, too. Yeah. And then that, right? I mean, they have now. Everybody has something to go home and talk about.
Imagine the 2018 elections, because every Republican, either the establishment Republican or people who have shifted Gregory Gutfeld to become Trump Republicans, they're all tied to Trump now. And with this tax bill, every Democrat running next year, 2018, is going to say, oh, you passed this bill for the rich. Oh.
I love that you didn't say guess what there.
Run against the tax bill. I think it's a loser, because if you look at the polling, because you like to cite the polling.
I do.
For the first time in over a decade, a majority say the economy is good or excellent, and a historic record now say the economy will improve the next year. You separate their feelings for Trump and their feelings from the economy. Things are good on the ground.
I got to go, you guys.
You got to help a person before you ask for their vote.
Hey, wages and jobs are up 1.
Tavis Smiley says PBS made a huge mistake suspending him over sexual harassment allegations. The network says he can't keep his story straight. Next.
Because I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass.
Tavis Smiley has been sidelined from PBS after the network said it found credible allegations of sexual misconduct. But the talk show host still insists that he's done nothing wrong.
I was never told what the accusations were, what the accusations were, who the accusers were. I was never allowed to provide any data or evidence to debunk anything that perhaps I could have debunked if I had known what we were talking about anyway. They made a huge mistake. They've engaged in a sloppy investigation, and something needs to be done to fix this.
Right. Well, Smiley admits to having sexual relationships with some of his subordinates, but claims they were all consensual.
In my employee handbook, we do not encourage inter-office relationships, but we don't forbid it either, because I don't know how things are going to turn out in your life when you start hanging out with our company. I don't know who you're going to meet. And let's face it, nobody's working 40-hour weeks anymore. We're working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. Where else are you going to meet people? In this business, we're starting to criminalize legitimate relationships between consenting adults, and that's a real problem for me.
PBS has fired back at Tavis, saying he needs to get his story straight. They maintain their investigation found misconduct inconsistent with the network's values and standards. So, Dana, this is a little bit of a different approach, because he's actually really gone on offense to try to say, listen to me, you made a mistake in suspending me. I was deprived of due process. This is what our employee handbook says, and really confronting it, kind of being his own best advocate to say, you guys went too far. I'm getting swept up in this swell of a movement, and, you know, so many cases that we've seen that have corroborative evidence, et cetera, but he took to the airwaves himself to defend.
Which I think, yeah, obviously that's different. Additionally, though, the additional sentence from the PBS spokesperson was that additional allegations are continuing to come to light since last week's announcement, which then we've heard that before as well. So, I mean, it could be that he doesn't even know what those allegations might be from other people. I do like it that he's putting it out there that, I mean, we've got to have a way to handle these things appropriately. And I'm not saying that PBS didn't, because we don't know the facts. The one thing I would say that PBS tried to do, at least, except for him, is to keep things private, right? It wasn't like laying it all out there that here's parade all of these accusers out in front. Maybe they're not even accusers if it's consensual. And I don't know PBS's handbook, but anyway.
It's a tote bag.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm glad that he didn't put it all out there.
Yeah.
He's maintaining he didn't.
That's true.
Oh, my goodness.
He's saying he never did that.
He never did that.
I've always liked Tavis.
No, but here's the problem. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here, but
Yeah.
right now we need women, not men, to become the fearless voice of reason here, because he sounds reasonable, and like you said, we don't know jack about the ingredients in his case. We don't really know, and oftentimes the things that are super shocking come out to be consensual. Like there was an anchor in which they said there was an assault. We never heard more about that assault in Sochi. Remember that? And I'm trying to figure out, maybe something did happen. And then you hear things that are mild, and you are about to defend them, and then you find out, oh man, like the Dustin Hoffman stuff turned out to be pretty creepy. Right. I didn't know that stuff. So we don't know the ingredients in these things. But what we do need is we need women to come out and talk about the fact that when we are conflating and putting these things all in one bucket, we're going to start hurting your fathers, your brothers, your sons, your grandfathers.
Or your business.
Or your business. But, I mean, actually thinking about having a dad who's, hasn't been dating for a while, who goes to a bar and says something stupid. It's like, or I don't know. I mean, like, they're conflating language and stupid behavior with all-out assault. And no one's going to listen to me about this, but they're going to listen to women who are going to start talking about this, because they're going to see that if this doesn't stop, everything will be cast as assault, and we will no longer be talking to each other. Young people will not take the risk of actually talking to another person, asking them out for a date.
So it'll just be robots.
Well, I hope it'll be robots, because robots are more attractive.
The weirdness, the sickness knows no bounds. Jesse, for more of it, let's get your
no more
take.
drinks at the Christmas party either.
Yes.
Tickets.
I don't know what happened with Smiley, so I don't want to talk about it. But I do know his point, and the point is, listen, there's good things about the Me Too movement because we're shining sunlight on men abusing power in a corporate environment or in a political environment, and let's get it out on the table. What were the photographs? What were the videos? What were the settlements? I want to see it all. But at the same time, if the Me Too movement's going to be about transparency, the Me Too movement also has to be about full and complete transparency. So, what was the history? Lisa Bloom, the woman that was dealing with the Trump accusers. There was payments. We're offering to pay those women, too. Let's get it all out on the table because, like you said, Greg, the pendulum can then swing the other direction. And we could all be in big trouble. Matt Damon got in trouble.
Exactly.
The other day for sounding extremely reasonable when he said, listen, I take when someone pats someone on the butt differently than someone Weinsteining someone.
Yep.
So... And he got blasted for that, which doesn't seem that off to me. And all Tavis is saying is, listen, if you're going to hammer me and discipline me, let me just get my story out there and let me get some evidence out there, or else it's becoming like a witch hunt. But I don't really know what happened there.
Let me ask you something. Some of the senators have made, statements that they would like Franken to rescind his resignation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is Pat Leahy of Vermont, Joe Manchin, West Virginia. And both have said, they really regret what they consider to have been a panic, a rush to get Al Franken out of the Senate and wish that he had been able to get due process, which is what I think Tavis Smiley is talking about. But in the Smiley case, by the way, it's not that he would go before an ethics committee. I think Tavis Smiley wants the evidence presented to him and given the opportunity to rebut it. The problem is in the corporate America, a lot of this really revolves around non-disclosure, privacy, confidentiality for people so that they feel comfortable in a corporate environment coming forward and don't think that they're going to be subject to retribution. So you have to make sure, as Jesse was saying, that people feel that there can be a clearing of the table. But it's not the case, and this is so interesting to me because I agree with you. I thought that what Matt Damon said was so reasonable. And yet, Minnie Driver, who was his co-star and friend, just smacked him big time and said, men don't understand what it is to be violated, by grabbing someone's butt or whatever, But I just feel like in so many of these cases, it's hard for us on the outside to come to some judgment. I must say I admire what Tavis Smiley did because he stood up in a way that I think was different in this moment because there is so much public opprobrium against anybody accused in this manner. And here he was saying, hey, wait a second. I'm not sure that he sold it when the PBS people came back, as Dana was talking about. I thought that was pretty strong.
I think we're all mistaken. I think what Al Franken meant to say was that he was going to quit smoking.
Okay, big misunderstanding there.
Yes.
But I'm surprised you didn't attack the Democrats because it's the Democrats that really forced out. I think they sacrificed.
This was all a political ploy. It was a cynical way. They did this before Moore was running, and then now Moore lost. They're going, hey, maybe it's okay if you stay.
All right, so did President Obama collude with Iran to let Hezbollah off the hook? A bombshell. New report coming up next.
Another one bites the dust. Another one gone. Chilling on a dirt road. Laid back, swerving like I'm George Jones.
Did the Obama administration derail a major investigation into Hezbollah's drug trafficking ring in order to save the Iran nuke deal? Well, that's the allegation in an extensive and explosive report by Politico titled The Secret Backstory of How Obama Let Hezbollah Off the Hook. The expose claims officials in the last administration threw roadblocks into a DEA operation called Project Cassandra, designated to track Hezbollah's criminal activities. Why? To secure a deal with a country that backs the terror network. That would be Iran. Marie Harf worked at the State Department in the Obama administration, and she disputes the story.
I was part of the negotiating team that got the Iran nuclear deal done. And until Politico wrote this piece, I had never even heard of this program. The Politico story, this narrative in it, is just false. And there's no evidence in this story to back up their allegations. They quote a couple of low-level ideological sources who clearly don't like the Iran deal, but everything I know just doesn't back up this narrative. In 2016, for example, the Obama administration's DEA did take action against Hezbollah's drug and laundering operations. So this story is a hit job, honestly, with no truth behind it.
Okay, so Greg, she's strongly pushing back against it, but what do you think happened?
I don't know. I read the article. It seemed pretty strong to me. I mean, what a contrast. The president excuses a terror group. The next one obliterates one. And I think about this. When it comes to our country, everything is on the table when it comes to defending it with Trump. But when it came to Obama's legacy, everything was on the table, including our security. And that's what this was about. This was about preserving President Obama's legacy. He wanted a Nixon in China moment with Iran, and that meant making a lot of strange deals. And his disciples willing to sacrifice safety. I mean, Ben Rhodes pretty much said this was, you had to lie, you had to cover this thing up to make it work.
He kind of bragged about that in that article, Jesse, when that came out last year.
All roads.
That guy had a whole, I guess, fake news propaganda stream that he enacted, and the media was willing participants. But I want to push back on what Marie Harf said. She said that the DEA under Obama took action in 2016 against these Hezbollah guys. That was after the deal was signed. So it didn't matter at that point, and that's their talking point. Let's look at some of the real things these guys were up to. This Hezbollah group, money laundering, cocaine trafficking, and arms dealing. It was a $1 billion enterprise. Lebanese arms dealer Ali Fayed tried to kill Americans. We got him in the Czech Republic. And instead of bringing him back, Putin said, no, keep him in the Czech Republic. And Obama said, all right, we're not going to lift a finger. And the guy's now out, and he's selling Russian artillery to the Syrian government. So basically, Putin's favorite arms dealer, Obama let him go. Imagine if Trump had done that. Then you have this other guy, the Ghost, huge cocaine trafficker, also tried to kill Americans. The Obama DOJ let him off the hook, too. And now what is he doing? Selling chemical weapons to Bashar Assad that he used to kill his own people. And it's not just low-level ideologues that said this. This was Obama-era Treasury official Catherine Bauer, on the record, testified to Congress. Under the Obama administration, these Hezbollah-related investigations were tamped down for fear of rocking the boat with Iran and jeopardizing the nuclear deal.
But in foreign policy decisions, it can get murky and it's not always clear-cut. If this did happen, was it worth it?
No, I don't think you ever do something like that. I think if there was, in fact, some kind of criminal conspiracy, I think that's a separate issue. If you wanted to negotiate an Iran deal, which had to do with stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons. But I have some trouble with the Politico piece in that I do think there's a real shortage of attribution to really strong sources. I think what you get instead, and I think the Obama administration officials have said this today, is a lot of speculation that appears to be coming from DEA, who thinks, well, this must have been a political operation coming from the Obama administration. Right. And the second thing to say is that Kevin Lewis, who is President Obama's spokesman now, said today, he said, really, there were sanctions before 2016 and actions, legal enforcement actions, on the record taken against Hezbollah after 2016. So exactly what is this article about other than what we've seen, which is all of a sudden you get a lot of conservatives saying, oh, gosh, Obama was stirring up trouble. He was ignoring the law in order to get his Iran deal, which is not popular with conservatives.
Let me get Kimberly in here about the DEA and how important is their work to the war against drugs, we're still calling it that, but to try to disrupt these type of rings that are funding terrorist activities but bringing a bunch of drugs into the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's really pivotal. You can't even imagine the amount of lives, impacted by the hard work that they do. They're really going to be unsung heroes in terms of people just sort of, okay, DEA, sounds good. We know they're busy, but they don't realize the impact because so much of what they do also serves as a deterrent and really prohibits some of the criminal conduct, the consumption. With drug dealing comes weapons, arms dealing, all of the above. So many of it ties together, and they work with ATF as well. So they kind of coalesce in terms of the two agencies working together. And, I've just seen that they've been very good in terms of their ability to do these investigations and really curtail the amount of drugs coming in this country.
And both of those heads of the DEA and the ATF are still open, but the White House told us today that they expect to nominate somebody in the new year. So we'll see. All right, Stephen Colbert's found a new way to lampoon President Trump. It's via cartoon next.
Stephen Colbert spends 5 nights a week bashing President Trump, but that's not enough, apparently. The Trump-hating comedian is now turning to cartoons to mock the presidency in a new series on Showtime.
Okay. You can do it. Come on. Come on. Oh, God. I can do it. Wait a minute. A cartoon president coming soon. Give me an Emmy.
That wasn't that bad. Juan, what'd you think?
Yeah, you know, I mean, so I'm trying to be sensitive because I guess you guys are doing this segment because you think this is ridiculous. Why is Hollywood? Because I expect you're going to attack the Hollywood elite.
You
or
guys,
the media.
the producers chose this one.
No, but I feel like it's your heart is in this.
What do you mean by you guys, Juan? That's insensitive.
Oh yeah, you guys, you conservatives. I shouldn't say that. Oh, I'll leave it alone.
Go ahead.
I'll leave it alone. No, I think it's fun. I mean, let's have fun. I mean, people have fun, but the question would be, is it actually going to be funny? Because if it's just about mocking Trump, you know, everybody can
see it anywhere.
Well, it's mostly about getting the young demo, 18 to 35, love watching Trump get attacked on television, and that's what the executives want to do.
Well, he also, took this tactic in the beginning, and even though he was struggling at first, his ratings have seen, increases and improvements in numbers. So he's pretty much programming, for the ratings, and what he's seeing works. So he's going to get that, segment of the population, and then what? Eventually, they're going to get a little bit bored with that. So he'll have to come up with a new, shtick. His funniest stuff was when he was at, Daily Show.
Right, and that's probably the carryover audience that he's looking to get. Those Daily Show people.
I imagine, so my question would be, is there a market for it? Because there is money in all things President Trump. So if you are here, Fox doing great. If you are over at NYT, they've got increased subscriptions, more engagement than they've ever had.
But I thought the New York Times was failing, Dana.
Right, well, but there's money in that too, right? Like, all of these things are used to make money. I'd be curious if this is actually successful and if it will rate. The one thing about that younger demographic, 18 to 35, studies show that if you vote for a certain party for your first 2 elections, you will probably vote for that party for the rest of your life. So the fact that the millennial generation is the largest generation and baby boomers are the next generation to die off, I do think that if you're a long-term planner and a demographer, if you're trying to loop people in, this might be a way to do it.
My first time I voted in a presidential election, I voted for the Green Party candidate.
Really?
So I don't
How'd
know if that
go for you?
holds.
But did you do it a second time?
No.
See, study holds. He thought green meant money.
Jill Stein.
Jill Stein, no,
because Putin told you.
No, she's caught up in the Russia investigation.
That's right.
All right, Greg, is this funny or not?
I don't know. I can't judge because entertainers just have quite a challenge. How do you make Trump more entertaining than the real thing?
True.
He's better than Alec Baldwin playing Trump. I don't think a cartoon's going to cut it because you're 2 steps removed. And this is also more evidence that this is the most free the media and entertainment industry have ever been in their lives. For the past 8 years before Trump, they were imprisoned by their own fear of offense, their own fear of being hated by their peers. They couldn't do cartoons of President Obama because they'd be considered racist and they wouldn't be invited to the right parties and they would lose the respect of, they wouldn't win awards. So I think the real oppression when people are worried about what Trump is doing is the reverse. If you're an athlete, if you're a professor, if you're an actor or a musician, you cannot voice pro-Trump sentiment or you will pay. This pays. The other side in that climate does not.
All right. Coming up, more people are celebrating Christmas without one important ingredient. We'll explain next.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a 57 Chevrolet.
Christmas around the corner. Americans seem to have the gift-giving down pat, but the role of religion in our celebrations, well, sadly, declining. According to a new Pew poll, fewer Americans are concerned with the religious aspect of the holiday, which is, of course, to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, most don't seem to be bothered by this secular trend. What about you, Kimberly?
Listen, I actually really like a religious focus at Christmas. I think it's very nice. I grew up with that. I went to, all private Catholic schools, and it was part of the tradition. We went to Mass every week, so I actually really enjoy all the musical aspects of, Christmas and the meaning and the birth of Christ. And so that's something to me, it's always been very uniform, very warm feeling for the families. It's nice to raise your children that way. Like I've raised, Ronan, and I'm with an appreciation of that Christmas isn't just about getting gifts of the latest toys or computers, but it's about really, the spirit and the gift of life and appreciating those.
But does it bother you that now more people are saying it really doesn't matter?
Yes, in fact it would, since that I just eloquently and beautifully expressed how much
I know how you
Jesus
feel and how
Christmas.
you are leading your life, but I'm saying, does it bother you that most people are now saying, well, no big deal?
I enjoy it. it. That's my personal decision.
Okay.
Maybe other people want to do that, but I don't know. This is how I was raised, so to each his own, so to speak. But I'm sure if they spent Christmas with me,
Jesse,
they'd like
the millennial generation is really at the cutting edge of this. Big drop. Something like only 40 to 32% say this is just a holiday. It's a secular thing. It's like, what do they call it? Christmas celebrations or
winter holiday?
I don't know. No, didn't Seinfeld have a name?
Festivus.
Festivus.
Yes.
There you go.
It doesn't surprise me. I used to do these shoots where I used to go out and ask, where was Jesus born? Remember one young person said Jesus was born in Europe. And I said, no, Bethlehem. And then I said, well, do you know where Bethlehem is? And he said, Pennsylvania.
Oh, my God.
So it doesn't surprise me. I'm not
right. He knows his U.S. geography.
Right. I'm not going to say, the world's over because this is going to happen. But it's important that, things like these and these holidays are anchored towards some kind of religious story. And that's fine. But as long as people are there with their families, around the tree, exchanging presents, I still think it's a very significant holiday, and I'm not going to say it's all gone.
Oh, by the way, Dana, 90% of us Americans say they celebrate Christmas. Good news?
Well, yes, and it's possible that millennials would decide to become religious later on in their life, but I do think that this is true worldwide, at least Europe and America, that church attendance has declined. I would say, though, and one of these things, for example, just biblical literacy, whether you are a believer or not, it's important for your education because there's so much goes into knowing those things, like when you're reading beautiful literature like The Old Man and the Sea, like things like that. If you know biblical literacy, if you have biblical literacy, you'll do better in your career.
One last thing for you, Greg.
Education.
Only 25% of Americans agree there's a war on Christmas.
How dare they?
Wow, we have really got to get on
There
it.
goes our War on Christmas special. I was hosting it with Dobbs. Anyway, I'm not religious. But I think it's hypocritical to celebrate Christmas if you're not religious, because religion here, in this case, Christianity created a really fun event, and you're taking part in the event without actually ascribing to its beliefs. That's hypocritical. That's why I'm not a big Christmas guy, because I don't ascribe to the beliefs. So I try to remain my consistency. I be polite. I go to the relatives. I exchange gifts, but I don't buy into any religion whatsoever because, there's so many of them and all of them believe that every one of them is wrong but theirs. So that's what they have in common. I think the real message here is that humans need a ritualistic activity that brings them together, and it's very important. And if we are moving away from a religious worldview, we need to figure out how we bring people together after that happens.
Should we let Greg celebrate Christmas?
Yeah, I'm going to get
You know what, Greg? I think it's okay. We're going to allow it.
He might be a lot less cranky, though. Right?
Believe me, I celebrated plenty of
Coming right
Christmases.
at you, America.
Time now for one more thing, Kimberly.
In a story that reminds me of Greg Gutfeld in every way possible.
Uh-oh.
There's a story about the Grinch. This is what happens when you don't accept the true spirit and meaning of Christmas into your heart. So a little boy was watching videos. His name is Tylen Pittman of Mississippi. He's 5 years old and quite charming.
So cute.
And he's so adorable. He's watching the videos. He's very worried about the Grinch stealing Christmas, so he takes matters into his own hands. Yes, he wants to be a police officer when he grows up. And he called 911 to ask the cops for help. Take a listen.
This is the Byron Police Department.
Watch for the Grinch, because the Grinch gonna steal Christmas, okay?
Oh my God, look at how cute. So here's the best part. So then the police took him over to the station to put the Grinch into jail, which he loved. So who doesn't want to send the Grinch to jail?
That's so fun.
Yeah, and he loved it. It was a great experience for him. And
Cute.
Super,
Great.
adorable.
Teach children lies. Lies.
Teach.
How heartwarming.
Don't ruin it.
I won't. Jesse.
All right, the Lakers retired Kobe Bryant's jersey last night. It was a spectacular event. He's from Philly, so we got to give him a love. Here he was right there, third-time all-time scoring in the NBA behind Kareem and Karl Malone. 5 NBA championships, MVP once, 18 All-Star games, amazing player. And he had some great advice for his young daughters. Take a listen.
It's not the destination, it's the journey. And if you guys can understand that, then what you'll see happen is that you won't accomplish your dreams. Your dreams won't come true. Something greater will. And if you guys can understand that, then I'm doing my job as a father.
Excellent. Thank you, Juan. Jesse. All right, real quick. If you go to the Conservatarians podcast, it's on ricochet.com. I appear on their podcast, and we count down the best albums of 2017. That's ricochet.com. Go to the website. Yeah, they put my head on somebody's body.
Oh, okay.
I hate it when they do that. All right, Juan.
Is that your tattoo?
All right. So my wife and I have been working on year-end charitable giving, but we can't compete with baseball pitcher Cole Hamels, MVP of the 2008 World Series. The Texas Rangers pitcher and his wife Heidi donate a $9.4 million mansion in Missouri to Camp Barnabas. The camp works as a Christian site to help people with special needs and chronic illnesses. Hamill says Barnabas makes dreams come true, and we felt called to help them in a big way.
Excellent.
By the way, this guy started
All
a
right.
foundation, and he's adopted children, Dana.
Very nice.
Right on. Okay,
children
this
are
is the
great.
most important gift that you will get this year. More
Yes.
important than the wine, the
I
annual
need it.
Jasper calendar.
Ooh.
I know that Greg will want his, and we'll be selling it on eBay.
There you go.
I will be selling this on eBay for starting at $100. Is that legal?
Someone will buy it.
Is that
I don't
legal?
think that's
I'll
legal,
sign
no.
this.
But Dana, I thought it was going to be
$1,000.
an
All right.
apple.
Yeah.
We gotta move on. This is so exciting. Set your DVRs and never miss an episode of The Five. Special report is up next. Hey, Brett, do you want a dog calendar? I have a dog calendar for you.
Oh, my God.
These transitions get more interesting every day. Thanks, Jay.
I'm transitioning now.
We can tell.